Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to this conversation on analytics and big data. This is a very hot topic right now as operators are getting more and more comfortable with trying to get all the information they can from their network, optimize the network, and using analytics and things like machine learning and AI in order to get the best use out of the data that could be otherwise quite, the volumes are huge, so it's important to keep everything under control. And today I'm talking to Kyle Ownbey. He's a product manager at TEMS GeoBase of InfoVista. Kyle, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, now can you tell us a bit about what is it you're doing at InfoVista, and what is it InfoVista is doing generally in the space of analytics?
Yeah, so InfoVista is an exciting company. It has a wide range of products and solutions that range anything from big data analytics in the geographic space to optimization, Planet for predictions, call trace analysis, optimization, service assurance products. It really has a really complete portfolio that covers end-to-end products.
Yeah, and what is it you do there?
So I'm the product manager of TEMS GeoBase, which is a big data analytic tool that combines multiple, really unlimited geographic data sources and provides smarter decisions faster. So
let's talk about the geographic component to that. What does it mean? What kind of location-based information you're using, and how is that useful to operators?
Yeah, so when you start talking about correlation of data, geography is one that's typically not included just because it is hard to do spatial queries. And so we leverage our expertise on big data analytics to take in every kind of data source you can ever imagine. This is from predictions from a planning tool, drive test, call trace information, DPI probes, billing records, anything that you can imagine. We tie it all into a geographic area. And so this means that for every geographic spot in a given market or network, I know everything about it. I can tell how many Starbucks are there, how many customers, what's the market penetration, is it operating correctly, because I can compare predictions versus drive test data, and if they don't match, then I know there must be a problem.
So all the analysis is done. Is it done at the edge, or is it done centrally? But you know every location, and you have any depth that you need to have for each location within your network.
Yes, so it's an on-premise installed in the data center, and we collect data from every kind of data source. Whether that's from a file server, from DPIs to database links, APIs, you name it, we can get data from it. And then we join it together and then push it out to a visualization page.
Mm-hmm. So what is it you found that operators do with the tool?
So what we found is, probably the most common use case is ranking cell sites. Is companies spend billions on rolling out their network, and a lot of times they treat all sites the same. And typically you see East region gets 1/3 of the money, West region gets 1/3 of the money, and Central gets 1/3 of the money. That may not be the case. And so with our tool, they're able to understand every capital expenditure, exactly what the best way to do it. And we find that typically they save about 20% of their overall build plan, because you start building sites in the correct order, you build the right sites. It has amazing properties.
So basically, you know what's going on in the network today. You know what your weak points are, where you have congestion or anything like that, and so you can use it for as a planning tool, right? Is that particularly useful? I would imagine for small sites, right?
Yeah. So typical. The planning part is they don't have access to live data, customer data, any kind of points of interest, and so when you tie all these in, you just get some really great insight into what's going on in your network. And that's just the starting point. And so what gets really exciting about this product is Because when you tie in this product as it can be the data lake or can tie into the data lake, it allows you to solve all sorts of issues and use data. So one of the problems that operators have is they spend a lot of money collecting data, and then it's so much, or they don't really know what to do with it, and it just sits unused. And we let them get value out of their data because we tie it together. And the same data set can be used from ranking a cell site to where to optimize, to where to put a store, how to understand utility cost of a cell site, anything.
Yeah, well, and the location information, it's really crucial, and especially the information that you gather from mobile operators, because today everything we do, I mean, we go everywhere with our mobile phone, so it's very important for source of information or just basic demographics. So our mobile operators using that for that as well, so that this data can be also leveraged not just for cell sites but for other things as well.
Absolutely. Is what we find is one is the great thing about what we do is analytics is addictive. Is you understand once you start using analytics to truly start making your decisions, because right now it's shocking how many processes are done manually or visually. Is they stare at a map and they say we should put a cell site here, and it's not really analytics. And so when you start using analytics, the two things you recognize really quick is how smart the decisions are, and two is how fast they come. It doesn't take months to get a decision, it takes seconds. And so even if you have 1 billion people working for you, it's not scalable. Is analytics and products like TEMS GeoBase can provide an answer before you can even send an email out to your 1 billion people that work for you.
Yeah, so I guess it's you can get much more out of it's much more efficient. You get automation. Does it mean that a lot of people will lose their jobs then, or it just seems like they're going to be?
No. So what typically happens when you start looking at people's daily roles is they very quickly get tied down in the lower level minutia and just turning the crank, gathering data. Most of the first step of all data analytics is data cleaning. And so usually you spend about 99% of your time prepping the data and about 1% of your time actually analyzing it. And so just imagine all those things that you would love to do if you actually had time to do it. We allow you that time to do it. And then you just build upon it. And so instead of that really smart individual who comes up with this great report or this great analysis, but now that person is tied to that and they can't ever do anything new because this is so valuable. Let us automate that and then start, and then you'll find even greater analytics you can do is it just feeds itself. And so it's really the way to go. It's a way to be agile and competitive in a very dense market.
Absolutely, and as you say, you want to clean the data, and it's a very good way to look at it, because operators have access to any amount of information, any depth of information. So the question is to find what matters to them, what's relevant. How do you do that? How do you know how to get and find out what the pieces that are important for the strategic decision?
It is. So my background is 20 years of RF engineering. And so I've done everything from drive tests to capacity plan to running networks, designing them. Myself, I have a lot of practical knowledge. And then InfoVista in itself is a market leader when it comes to this. And so we have some really deep bench of people to rely on. And we've turned into, and I think the way we started was we had a problem to solve, and we were doing it the manual method, and then we turned to big data to solve that problem for us. I think most products really kind of start with from the big data side and their IT organizations, and then they don't really know what to do with it at the end. And I think that's the difference is practical applications with analytics is our trademark.
Right, and in order to do that, you have to bring information from different sources that are traditionally separate, which I guess is part of the problem why people cannot put everything together, or our mobile operators. So you're able to pull all this information together. How is that done, and how is that used by operators?
Yeah, so like our largest deployment has 42 different data sources that will require almost 30 different logins. And so one person would never have access to this kind of information. So knowing that fault information, or if they have a picocell in the area, or what's the average ARPU? Are they a VIP customer? All these kind of things tie in and allow you just to make these decisions that were never possible before. And it really just speeds it up. And so what we find is the more data that we put into the system, the smarter it gets. And so that's usually our first step, is we meet with the customer and we understand their use cases and what drives it. And then we just start loading data into it. And one of the key differences between TEMS GeoBase and other products is one is because we can get the first data set up about 30 days after you spin the hardware up. And that's an integration time of 30 days is just unheard of. The second thing is our databases, because we use Hadoop and a SQL database to run the visualization, is completely open. And this means that we want you to use the data because it's your data. And so if you want to use it to drive other BI platforms, or you want to use ours, it's not a proprietary flat file system that nobody is allowed to see. And so it just becomes part of this great solution inside your organization. And we see operators using it for things that we never thought that they were going to start out with. It started out as ranking cell sites and telling you where to do capital expenditures, all the way from now is operators are using it to identify sites that have electric costs that are too high, where to put a store, where to put a billboard, understand marketing campaigns. All these things start out as a design, but then you see that all the data can be used by every part of the organization. It's just a different view. And so instead of you pivoting on a network element, you pivot on where the customer is or where the subscriber is. But it's the same data set, and it can be used for multiple organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's actually interesting that you can use that to place, I say, to decide where to build a new store or a billboard for advertising. So how does that work in terms of how do you do it, and how do operators sell or market that data?
Yeah, so if you think about it, so what is a good cell site? I need a lot of population and poor coverage. I don't want to put a site where there's existing good coverage, and I want to cover a lot of people so I get a return on my investment. And so where would I put a store? Well, I want good coverage because, if you're going to sell and they go in there and they can't use the phone that they're going to buy, then they wouldn't buy it. So I need good coverage. I need a lot of people. Maybe I need high vehicle counts that drive on the roads. These make good store locations. And so you can see how we can just use the exact same data set for multiple different use cases.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at geographic locations, so you can say, if there is a cell out there that there might be a problem, there might be something, but the problem might not be in the cell itself. It might be coming from the core or in the handset. So you need to have an end-to-end view of the network, even to understand what's going on at a specific location. Can you do that? And if so, how does that work?
Absolutely. So InfoVista has a couple of products for that. There is, outside of TEMS GeoBase, that we do have an end-to-end solution on service assurance that's just for those things. It just does hundreds of different test cases from end to end to understand all the way from VoLTE to just the regular 2G voice call. With TEMS GeoBase, when you start adding things geographically, really, if you start looking at how to troubleshoot, it's tell me the scope of the problem. If it's one sector, then I know it can't be the backhaul because I have 3 sectors and the other 2 are doing fine. And so once I know the scope of the problem, then I can absolutely tell you the troubleshooting. And so if it's 10 sites, then I know it has to be, is it a hub site? What's common between these 10 sites? And when you start tying things in geographically, it lets you do that really quick deep dive, which you're not able to do, when you don't use it geographically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and that is crucial. Now, one thing that you sort of alluded to that obviously you can use this information to plan. So that introduces the whole issue about predictive power of analytics, because it's good to find out what the problem is today, but you also want to prevent issues in the future, and you want to have your network ready.
Right.
In terms of having a predictive analytics, what is that you need to have in place?
So when we start getting into predictive, what you really need is you need the trifecta of data sources. And so this gets into root cause analysis. So when you look at the history of analytics, it really started out with, first I want to automate a process. And once that's automated, and then what do I want to do with it? Well, then I want to start doing root cause analysis. When I want to do root cause analysis, I need performance, configuration, and fault management. Because with those three, I can solve any problem. Because those are the only three reasons. It was a change, was it broke, or was there a traffic pattern shift? And so with those three data sources, I can. So when I tie all those together, I can start doing root cause analysis. And then the final and the most exciting is the machine learning and the predictive, is because I have all the information I needed, I can turn it loose, and I can do things like, and calculations that were, trillions of calculations that would never be possible manually, is things like, I can put a cell site every 100 meters that covers the entire United States. Essentially, let me design out 2 billion cell sites, understand which one is the best, remove that, and then run another iteration to find the second best. These kind of analytics were never possible before in R. Getting into predictive to understanding what's the current demand of an area. We know that once the coverage or the quality gets better, we know the usage goes up. What's that complete relationship between? And so as we start looking, especially start getting into small cells and the Internet of Things, understanding that relationship between 5 or 6 different spectrum, along with multiple different cell site types, from pico, femto, small cells, macro, micro, all these kind of things, it becomes just too complex and impossible for a person to do.
Right, absolutely, and you brought up an interesting issue that there is especially with IoT, you tend to have new services, new devices, new interfaces. So our networks are becoming more complex, but that means more complexity and more work, but it's also more of an opportunity to use analytics and to optimize. Because if everything happens, if everything is linear, all the communication, all the transmission goes in one way, one service. Just if you have, like we had decades ago, just voice, you cannot optimize a whole lot. But now you can optimize more because you have more dimensions. How is IoT, the introduction of IoT, changing the way we do analytics?
Well, really a couple of things. The first is just the size of the number of objects. Is everybody everybody who can have a phone has a phone, maybe even multiple phones. And so really when he starts moving into what is the next subscriber, it's a thing. It's your refrigerator. It's a collar for your dog. It's your car. It's everything that ties them together. And this so again, this starts tying into geographic relationships between where the subscriber is or where that item is, and if you want to IoT your dog collar, you need to know the relationship and the location between it and yourself, because that's what you really care about. And to understand the complexity of all these different data sets is just impossible without analytics.
Yeah, well, without analytics and without automation, right? Because that's, as you said before, nobody can do it just by hand, manually.
No, and even the tools available, one of the things that we ran into was typically when you create analytics is you can use different tool sets to analyze your results just to make sure that you're correct. As I did something in this one tool, and then maybe I open an Excel and calculate a different way to see if I'm on track. The data are so big that we actually had to use GeoBase to analyze TEMS GeoBase, just because there's no data out there. When you start talking about billions and petabytes of information, what tool out there can you use? And so we actually had to run multiple instances just to understand exactly what's going on, and are we right? And so it gets very, very exciting.
Yeah, well, because the complexity gives you more of an opportunity for learning and to move forward. What about 5G? Because then we're going to go even further in terms of complexity, different interfaces. How is that going to change again analytics?
It will, and so one thing that we've seen is with 2G, 3G, and 4G, we don't get any more people. We add network layers of network elements on top of the mobile operators, and they don't increase the number of engineers. And so the G's are getting bigger, and the people are staying the same. And so they need some sort of analytic product to help them, to solve those problems. And so with 5G, especially when you start talking about millimeter wave, all the small cells. And truly understanding the bandwidth needed per person, because really what we have to do is to make 5G work is we have to give the customer exactly what they need, not too much, not too little, exactly. And so understanding that, it will only come through analytics.
No, absolutely. Now, if you were to say, what do you hear from operators? What are the pain points that you can help them with? What are the top ones?
So definitely just the size of data, and the complexity of the networks are just increasing as day goes on. And it's moved from, especially with engineering, it's moved from RF focused, radio frequency focused, to more of an IP background. And so understanding how the protocols work through the internet is completely different from the air interface, and merging those two together, especially on multiple frequencies and RF different characteristics, has become just very, very scary for them. And so being able to use this data, and with tighter and tighter budgets, because there is such a competitive landscape, they need something to be agile and be competitive, and analytics is the way to do it. It's the first big data platforms were seen as a tier 1 only product, but honestly is the tier 3s and need it more than the big guys do, because the big guys actually have money they can throw at problems, and if they lose it, it's not that big of a deal. When you're a tier 3 and you want to be competitive, every dollar counts, and you can't afford to waste weeks or dollars when it comes to running your network.
Yeah. And I guess it is much more of a sense of urgency that we have in the past. Now, moving forward, what should we expect from InfoVista in terms of what are the directions in which you are moving in the future?
So definitely, we're very heavy into analytics and machine learning. All of those are just big keywords for us. And as we move forward, we're tying our products in. That was one of the great things about when InfoVista acquired ASCOM, is there was very little overlap in their products, and both companies brought these great skill sets that we were able to merge in together. And so I know myself, coming from the ASCOM side, as soon as we were acquired, immediately just reach out to the call trace. They had a great call trace tool, and then Planet, being a predictive tool, which is a market leader there. Having those now and as things that I can lean on and take that expertise and made GeoBase even a stronger product. And so that's what you'll see more of, is just more analytics, more synchronization between all the different products. It's really going to help and be a complete solution for mobile operators.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kyle, thanks for sharing your insights with us today.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, it's good having you.
Okay, well, this conversation was part of a report on analytics by Sensafili that is being done in collaboration with Outside Wireless News. And I would like to thank you all for listening. Thanks.